Hi, and welcome back to another video by Jim the Car Guy. This one is actually, I thought this was going to be my last video on what the heck were these tools used for. But believe it or not, I went looking through my box the other day and I found a bunch of other stuff, not in my main toolbox, but in my third toolbox I have over here. I found a bunch of other stuff too. So there will be one more after this fifth one. So, all right, this is the fifth one. Remember we talked about the tool that I showed you was actually this piece right here. I think this is the one I showed first. And basically what this tool was used for, this was actually a steering wheel puller. You would actually be able to compress the, I'll show you actually. I just happened, like I said, I used to do a lot of theft repairs, so I still have a lot of parts for the antique cars. Anybody out there needs any stuff for the old GM cars for the steering column, the tilt columns, I have a lot of this stuff here. If you need it, send me an email. I'd be more than happy to send you whatever I have still left here because it's just sitting over here collecting dust. And, you know, somebody can use it, just send me an email. Let me know. I'll be more than happy to send it to you. And that's it. If anybody is doing a steering column repair and they need to know any advice, especially on the GM steering columns, send me an email, give me a call, whatever. I used to do so many of these, I could do my eyes closed. It was very, very common here in New Jersey. We had a lot of theft recoveries. Cars were so simple to steal. Once they popped that door lock out, they went inside. There's a plastic cover around the steering column. You pulled that off, you busted a piece called a rack, and you could turn it, start the car up and drive away. What this piece here was used for, imagine now, obviously this is in pieces. This is the steering shaft. The steering shaft came right through here, like this here. The steering wheel would connect on right up on the top right here. This spring would fit over the top like that, and then this piece here would actually go on here like this, and that would be how the steering wheel would lock in place. That's why the steering wheel wouldn't turn, because this lock pin would lock it. So what we used to do is you had to take this tool here and you put it on this steering wheel like this. You put it on here and you turned it and you pushed this piece down here, and there was a little tiny snap ring on here. You had to take that snap ring off to get this off. So that's what that tool was used for. This tool was used to compress this lock plate down here so we could actually take the snap ring off so we could access everything underneath. What they used to break, and it's missing right now, but this is where your key would connect into, right here. Your key switch would go right here. This would connect into a piece called a rack, and you would actually be able to start the car by breaking that rack and driving away. So that was that's how you removed this. Now to take this off, this was a little bit more difficult to take off. This, you had these pieces. You see how this piece is missing right here? That's out. You see how this one is still in there? Remember I showed you this tool right here? And you were probably saying, what the heck is this tool for? Well, this is what the tool was. You would take this screw off like this. You would take this off. You'd put the screw on like this, right? Screw it all the way down like that. This piece would go like this, like that, and then, I'll move a little closer so you can see it. This piece here, you needed to get that screw out of there. And this is actually, this is sticking out just a little bit. These were always flush, where you couldn't get underneath here with anything. What you would basically do is you would screw this piece here on here like this, screw it in like that, then you would hold this. That's going to be hard to do because it's not on the car. And then you would tighten up this right here, like that. You know what? I'm going to do this on the bench down here so you can see it. We're going to move this stuff out of the way. And basically what you would do is you would take this right here. You would hold this one stationary like this. And you would take this piece here and you would just turn it like this. But it was real important that you held that little 3/8 on this side first, because If you didn't hold it, you would actually just unscrew the whole unit right out, and you'd still have your pin stuck in there holding your tilt together. And that is how it used to pull out. This tool worked great. I can't tell you, well actually, you know what? You could probably tell by looking at this how this is all smashed up a little bit, how many of these I've done. All right? And then, like I showed you, I always put it together like this, so that way when I need it, I know where everything is. All right, so that was the, come on back up here with me. All right, so, come on, there we go. All right, so that was how we did the theft recoveries. All right, and then we, once we had these 2 pins out, then we could take, and you had that other lock piece off up here, then you could actually just pull your lever for your tilt steering wheel, and you could pull this whole assembly out so that you can gain access to the lower rod that went down to the ignition switch itself. Without those tools, you couldn't do this job. They work great. So that was the steering columns. And like I said, I'm in New Jersey, so they used to steal cars like crazy. I used to pay a guy back then, I think $175 to come to the shop and do this repair for me. I bought all the tools, I learned how to do it myself, and I could knock one of these out in probably, if I had the parts, half an hour, I could rebuild a whole steering column. It was very, very simple. The hardest part, believe it or not, was a lot of times the steering column itself was painted a certain color. The hardest part was actually painting it. That took the longest, because by the time you primed it and painted it, it would take you a while before it would dry thoroughly, so you'd paint it one day and you put it back together the next day. That was the pain in the rear end. The painting was the hardest part. The rest of it was a piece of cake. All right, so that's the steering column tools. Like I said, anybody needs any information on how to rebuild these columns, give me a call. Be more than happy to tell you how to do it. I can do it with my eyes closed. The next thing I showed you was this. Looks like some kind of a tool to compress something, right? This actually would go on top of the valve spring. You would take this, clip it onto the valve spring itself, over the top of the spring. Now obviously this was up all the way, and then you would take this piece, put it on top of the spring itself. This would grab the bottom of the spring. You would turn it like this, and you would push it down, and then you would take the little keepers. The spring would be up here like that. The stem would be right up here like this here. You would take those little keepers right off the top right here, and then you could take the valve spring off the car. That pencil magnet that I showed you before, that pencil magnet came in handy, because once you push that spring down, those little keepers were tiny. They were only about maybe 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch. You would take them out with this here, put them off to the side. Now obviously this is not a spring for a valve, but it would be similar to this. You would take the valve spring off like this, just take it off, relocate it off to the side. Now you're saying to yourself, why would you take the valve spring off? Oh, let me just back up. Before you took the valve spring out, very important this was, you took the spark plug out, you put in a compression tester into the spark plug, and you connected air pressure into it. The air pressure would keep the valve pushed up into the seat, and therefore you could take the valve spring off and take those keepers out, and the valve itself would not drop into the cylinder. That was really important. I should have told you that to begin with, but it's been a while since I've done it. All right, so you put the air in the cylinder. Once you have the air pressure in the cylinder, you put this piece on top, you compress the valve spring down, take out the keepers with this. Now once you have the keepers out, you're probably saying to yourself, why do you want to take the valve spring off? Did the spring break? Yeah, they used to break years ago. It was very common to have a broken spring, so you can just change the spring. More common was you used to have the valve stem sticking up like this. On top of the valve stem, there was a piece called an umbrella, and it looked just like an umbrella. It was like a cap that went on the top of the valve spring, of the valve itself. It sat on the top of the spring. So when the oil would run down the valve, it would hit that little umbrella, and it would drip off to the side and keep the oil from running down the valve stem into the engine and burning off in the engine. So we used to change those those little umbrella seals all the time. If you had a car that was smoking, most of the time it was the umbrella seals that went bad on the valves. I remember one car, a guy comes in, and his driveway was pitched. And he said when he parked his car in the driveway, his car would smoke like a chimney. In the morning, it would smoke like crazy. But if you parked it on level ground, it wouldn't smoke. Basically what happened is back then, people just like today, don't change their oil frequently. The oil passageways would become clogged. When they became clogged, the oil would lay up in the top. So when the engine was tilted on an angle like this, the oil would run down into the back of the engine, and it would seep down through the little umbrella seals and down into the engine and smoke like crazy. So this tool was used a lot of times on almost every car. I used this tool on to get the valves off so I could change the umbrella seals. Some of them were a pain in the rear end when you got back by the right side air conditioner where the evaporator is in the car. It was a little bit tight to get in there, but this worked most of the time. And the last tool, remember I said about this one here? This is not to discuss the bill with the customer. It's like, come on, we're going to get this paid now. We didn't use it for that. This one we used to use a lot on, I think it was like Buicks or maybe even Oldsmobiles. I don't recall exactly. Some of the Fords actually, this worked good with too. They used to have a stud that the rocker arms would connect onto. The stud would go right through here. You would unscrew, again, you'd put air into the cylinder, shoot air into the cylinder, keeps the valve in the up position. You would take the tool, take the valve spring off, you would unscrew it and take the rocker arm off, take the rocker arm off and you would have a stud just sticking up. This piece would go over the top of the stud, you'd screw the nut back on here, so now this piece was connected on where the rocker arm was. And this would go over the top of the valve itself. Now again, this is not the valve spring, but it's similar. It would go over the top of the spring like this, and you would lift it up, and you would compress the spring down, and then you would get in there with your tool like this, and you would take those two keepers out of there, and you could take the entire valve spring, again, not the valve spring, but a demonstration. You would take the valve spring off, and now you would just have the top of the valve itself, the valve sticking up like this here. And the little umbrella seal was right there. Most of the time these seals would just disintegrate and you wouldn't even have them anymore. You would take what's the remaining of it, take the seal off, slide the new seal back down, put your valve spring back on the top like this, put your tool over the top like this, compress it down, put your two keepers back on there, and that's it. That cylinder was done. Most of the time you could knock these out in about an hour and a half, 2 hours. They were very simple to do. Not like that anymore. You know what you got to do today to do anything with the valves on a car or a truck. They're really a pain in the rear end to do. All right, so I think that was everything I had for the fifth in a series of what the heck were these tools used for. Anybody needs any information, like I said, send me an email. I'd be more than happy to talk to anybody about anything. And that's it. We're all set. I'm going to do one more. I did find some other tools over there, so I will do one more, and it'll be the sixth in a series of what the heck were these tools used for. So that's it. We're done for today. All right. As always, thanks for watching. Any questions or comments, let me know what you thought about this series. I'd be more than happy to hear from anybody about anything. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one.